All right, everybody, welcome to today's lesson. Today we're going to be talking about the political spectrum. There's going to be some quick slides, just some quick information. I'm going to give you a few examples and give a few definitions. So it might be a good idea for you to have your notebook out or something to write with so you could take some notes, or you could have a separate Google tab open so you could take notes on a doc. Either way, make sure you have something to write some stuff down. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Talking today about the political spectrum. All right, so before we jump into talking about what specifically a political spectrum is, we've got to make sure that we're all on the same page with what a spectrum is in general. All right, if you took global studies here at Leiden, you should already be familiar with what a spectrum is. That's kind of one of the big ideas revolving around global studies, right? If you're not, that is okay. It's a pretty easy concept to wrap our heads around. So let's get into it and talk about it, right? So what is a spectrum? A spectrum is essentially a line, and that line represents what people believe, right? It represents two different ideas or beliefs to one issue. Okay, so think of an issue that's happening today, right, in our society, in our world, or in our country, right? So you can think of issues revolving around COVID, issues revolving around race relations, Black Lives Matter, police brutality, right? You could think about issues revolving around legalization, around immigration, around security, economics, anything really. A spectrum can be used to give a visual representation of where somebody falls with their beliefs on a specific issue or topic. Okay, so this is the basic setup for what a spectrum looks like. You're going to see a line here, and you're going to have two sides to that line, one all the way to the left, one all the way to the right. All right, these are what we call extremes, or they're also called poles, right? And they're all the way and all the way, right? Usually people are not all the way to one side or all the way to the other. Usually people are not extremes or poles, right? Usually people fall somewhere in the middle, right? Smack in the middle, that's what we call moderate, right? When somebody's closer in the middle, right? When somebody is moderate but not extreme, right? Maybe somewhere in this area or in this area, right? You might hear the word leaning, right? So you have, like, let's say, for example, right, we have a left side of the spectrum and a right side of the spectrum. If somebody is left leaning, right, they're going to be closer to the left side of the spectrum, right, but not all the way to the left or not all the way in the middle. Same idea with right leaning, right? They might be somewhere in this area, not all the way to one side and not all the way in the middle. Okay. Now the thing about the spectrum that we need to remember is that it's difficult to place people in black and white, which is why a lot of the times you'll see spectrums as a gradient, right? Where you'll see some colors fading into the others. This is a pretty good representation of what it is because a spectrum does a really good job of representing a range of ideas, right? Rather than it being black or white, right? You either believe this or you believe that, right? Spectrums allow us to kind of see the range of people, right? So somebody might believe something a little more than something else, right? Or feel a little bit stronger about something, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's one or the other, right? It could be, it's on a spectrum, right? So there's a gradient, there's gray areas, okay? And this is a good job of putting that as a visual, okay? So if you think of any issue, any idea, right? Let's take, for example, COVID, what's happening, right? A lot of people are saying there's one side of the debate, right? Let's say for schools, for example, right? Where there's people that want to go back to school, right? And then there's another side of the debate where people don't want to go back to school, they want to stay home. Okay, or parents don't want to send their kids, right? So if somebody believes that yes, we need to get back into school, right? No mask, no social distance, let's go back to normal, right? They may be all the way on this side, closer to the extreme side, right? Whereas somebody who says, yeah, well, we should send them back to school, but maybe have them wear masks and social distance and use hand sanitizer and things like that, right? Maybe they're going to be in this area, right? Because they're not extreme, right? However, they're not in the middle and they're definitely not on this side, right? So maybe we'll put them as a moderate, right? Whereas somebody who says, oh, yeah, maybe let's have them online first and then give it a few weeks and then we'll see, maybe we'll be able to send them back, right? Maybe we'll put them in a left-leaning moderate, right? And then somebody who says, no, they can't go back ever, right? We need to keep them home in order to keep everybody safe until COVID is completely over. We can't send them back, right? That may be over here towards this pole or this extreme of the spectrum, right? So do we kind of see, right, how it works where there's two sides, right? And then everything in the middle is kind of a gradient, right? So somebody who believes but not all the way would be here, right? Vice versa, or somebody who's right in the middle, right, would be moderate. Very rarely you'll get somebody or yourself that's right in the middle. Most likely you're going to lean in one direction, right? Depending on where, just depends on personal beliefs, okay? Let's get another example in here, all right? So pineapple on pizza, controversial. I know, it's a pressing issue. It would be like that sometimes, right? Do we like pineapple? Do we not like pineapple? That's a personal preference, but let's put it on a spectrum, all right? On the left, we got people who really really dig pineapple on pizza. Like they cannot eat pizza without pineapple, okay? A little extreme? Yeah, we're gonna put it on the extreme, right? And these other people, right, who if there's a piece of pineapple on a pizza, they will leave the restaurant. They will not go anywhere near that pizza. It's not going to happen, right? We're all the way on this side, right? And then in the middle, right, we have people who have different opinions on it, right, who might lean on either side, okay? So let's say for myself, all right, your boy likes sweet and savory, all right? I like sweet things to be savory or salty. I like savory things to be sweet. It's a thing, all right? It happens. But judge me if you will, I appreciate some pineapple on my pizza, all right? However, I will eat pineapple without pizza. It's not that deep. So I'm going to if I were to put myself on the spectrum, right, which you guys are going to be putting yourself on spectrums later on throughout this unit, I would probably put myself here, okay, because I enjoy it, I like it. However, I don't feel too strongly about it, right? I could eat it with or without, but I do like it, okay? So I would put myself here, right? Somebody who would say, yeah, I mean, I would eat it if it's there, but I'm not going to order it, right? Maybe I'll go over here, okay, somewhere in this area, right? So it really just depends on personal preference or what other people say, right? So we put them on the spectrum, okay? Cool. Next, skip that. You're gonna watch that later. All right. So I would take a second. All right. Go ahead and pause this video in your notebook or wherever you're writing notes down. All right. I want you guys to come up with your own definition of spectrum. All right. Write that down. I'm not gonna stop just for time's sake, but pause this video, get a definition down in your notebook. What is spectrum? You're going to have to come up with that answer later for a journal question, so just make sure that gets done. Moving forward, okay, so the big idea for this lesson, the political spectrum, what is it, all right? So you guys are already familiar with what liberal and conservative is, right? Those two big ideas, right? They're big beliefs, right? We're going to throw them up on a spectrum. So liberals always go to the left, all right? Easy way to think about that, liberal, left, both start with L's, put them on the left. Liberals are always going to be in blue. That'll make sense in a bit, right? Conservatives are always going to be on the right, all right? And they're always going to be in red, okay? So conservatives go on the right, liberals go on the left. In the middle, we have moderates, all right? Some people call these people purple, right? Because it's a mixture between the blue and the red, right? So in the middle, right, we have moderates, okay? So when we apply the spectrum to the political scene of the United States, right, essentially we have two sides and we have everybody kind of falling somewhere in the middle, right? We do have extremists, right? There are extreme liberals, there are extreme conservatives, right? We have different names for those kinds of people, right? But the majority of people are going to fall somewhere in the moderate section, with the majority of people either being left-leaning liberals or left-leaning moderates, sorry, or right-leaning moderates, right? Or there's also moderate liberals, conservative moderates. Those are all different names for them, right? But this is what the spectrum is going to look like, okay? So a few things about the liberal side of the spectrum, right? Take a look at the words that I have up here. These are all things that if you see them, they represent the left side of the spectrum, the liberal side, all right? So liberals, we know, right, one of their main basic ideas that we got from the reading yesterday was that they are open to change, right? They're trying to progress, push forward, right? Move into the future, change things, make them better for all types of people, right? They're into equality and creating opportunities for everybody to succeed. Okay. Liberals are also Democrats. Okay. Democrats are known for being the liberal party, right? They're on the left. They're represented by blue. They are represented by a donkey. That's their mascot. Not entirely sure why. I'll look into it and get back to it, right? They are on the left side. Their big platform is equality and progress, right? They're in favor of government regulations and civil liberties. That's all from the reading that you guys got already, right? But when we talk about the Democratic Party, now remember when we're talking about political parties, we're not talking about parties like where you go and party, right? We're talking about two groups of different groups of people, right? And these different parties are in charge of sending representatives to Congress, right? Making laws happen, sending, becoming president, right? So when we talk about Democrats, we're talking about liberals. Now, Democrats are also on the spectrum, right? You could talk to two different Democrats, and one could be a moderate Democrat, one could be an extreme Democrat, one could be in the middle, right? So it really just depends on each individual person's, right? But most of the times when somebody says they're a Democrat, they're a liberal. Okay, so just keep that in mind. That doesn't necessarily mean it's to the extent of everybody, right? But most of the times when somebody says they're liberal, right? When somebody says they're Democrat, they're most likely going to have liberal ideas. The Democratic Party is built off of liberal ideas. Okay. And vice versa, on the opposite end, on the right end of the spectrum, right, we have conservative. Okay, so conservatives, we know from the reading that they would prefer things to stay the same, right? They're into traditional values, lawful society, things like that, right? They believe that what's working is working, so let's keep doing that, okay? And they are associated with the Republican Party. The Republican Party is represented by the elephant. Again, don't know why, figure it out later, get back to you. Okay, they're represented by the color red. They are always on the right. When you hear somebody saying the right, right, they're talking about the Republican Party or conservatives. Okay, they are into small government, right? They don't like a lot of government interference. They're into independence, right? They don't like the government getting involved in people's personal lives. They also don't like, or they do like traditional values, right? Traditional family values and morals, and the lawful society, right? And protecting Americans. Okay. So when we're talking about Republicans, right? Most of the times, right, we're dealing with conservative ideas. Okay. Keep in mind, same idea for liberals, right? Republicans are also on a spectrum, right? One Republican might be closer to the middle, another Republican might be closer to the extreme, another Republican might be right in the middle of those two. So it really just depends on the person. However, the Republican Party is the conservative party. Okay. Currently, Donald Trump is a Republican and he has many conservative views, right? So they line up with each other. Okay. So yeah, those are the two major parties. There are smaller parties that you can get into, like the Green Party or the Tea Party. Right? But for our purposes, we are focusing on the two big ones, liberals and conservatives, and Democrats and Republicans. Okay. Take a look at this map really quick. Feel free to pause the screen, right? This is the Electoral College map from the 2016 election. You can see the states in red, which we know now that red is represented by conservatives or Republicans, blue, liberals or Democrats. So you could kind of see where the states that are in favor of liberal ideas versus the states that are in favor of conservative ideas. There's another map here. This one is by voting precinct. Okay, so you can see the areas in blue are more in favor of liberal ideas, more likely to vote Democrat, and the areas in red are more in favor of conservative ideas, more likely to vote Republican. Here we are, right here is Chicago. So Chicago and the surrounding suburbs are mostly liberal. We have a record of voting for Democrats. Okay. Every person falls on the spectrum, all right? So just depending on your idea, you could fall somewhere else, right? Depending on who you talk to, they will fall somewhere on the spectrum. So just keep that in mind, okay? So next thing, I want you guys to think a little bit about where do you fall on the spectrum, either for the pizza or for politics. Think about it. Where do you fall on the spectrum?